Revenge with Karen.
Can someone get us coffee? Derek barked across the room without looking up from his overpriced tablet. He meant me. Of course, he did. I was seated at the corner table like some forgotten potted plant, the quiet assistant with reading glasses and an unassuming blouse. He didn't know my name. Didn't care. He just assumed the woman not speaking must be there to fetch caffeine and smile politely at Alpha Peacock's swinging PowerPoint decks like swords. I didn't flinch, didn't even blink. I just sat there, legs crossed, pen unmoving. Let the fool keep guessing. That's been my job for the past 4 years, watching, listening, smiling when appropriate, taking mental notes with the precision of a forensic accountant. They think I'm harmless. They think I'm done. Retired, old guard, a relic from the founding days, graciously allowed to linger like a janitor who knows the Wi-Fi password. That's how Alan likes it. That's how he designed it. Take a step back, Denise, he'd said after my surgery. Let the new blood do the dance while you rest. Right, rest. I built this company with a laptop, a broken marriage, and 2 maxed-out credit cards. But sure, I'll sit quietly and rest while the clowns juggle flaming investor money. Derek strutted in 6 weeks ago like a rooster let loose in a mirror factory, chest puffed, teeth too white, belt buckle shiny enough to deflect shame. Another consultant with a buzzword addiction and a 6-figure retainer. Alan introduced him like he was the second coming of Jobs. He's going to help us scale, Alan beamed. He's cleaned up 24 companies before us. Cleaned up, huh? I checked. 1 of them went bankrupt. 2 were sued for fraudulent reporting. 1 turned into a crypto MLM scam with a podcast. But sure, let's hand him the wheel. They think I'm not watching. But I see it all. Eric's proposal to streamline the legacy footprint didn't go through the board. Alan authorized a reallocation of stock options without a vote. A hiring freeze was implemented, and I only found out when the new receptionist I personally referred was told the position was canceled. Not by HR, by Derek, through Slack. I guess that's how executive decisions get made now, via emoji and vibes. Funny thing about being underestimated, it's like hiding in plain sight. You stop existing in their reality, which means you can move through it like a ghost. The interns talk openly in front of me. I've heard everything from insider gossip to which client accounts Derek wants to quietly sunset to make the books look prettier. The old shareholders are just noise, he said last Tuesday over lunch, holding a forkful of overpriced seaweed salad. We clean the cap table, rebrand, take it public, and poof, none of this founder baggage matters. Poof, huh, cute word, fluffy. Like the look on his face is gonna be when he realizes the baggage holds 60% of the company's equity through a trust he's too lazy to trace. I never sold my shares, never even diluted them. I let them believe I stepped back because I was tired. But no, what I got tired of was watching egos wreck the thing I built from scratch while grinning like they invented sliced bread. I'm done watching, playing checkers on my chessboard, and I just moved my queen. And hey, if you're still listening, first off, bless you. Second, odds are 95% of you aren't subscribed, and my team's been surviving on coffee and corporate betrayals. So if this tale tickled your spine or punched your gut in just the right way, hit that little subscribe button and maybe throw in a like. It helps us way more than you think. All right, back to the storm. The real kicker, Alan, my former mentee, my hand-picked successor, the man who once sent me flowers on Founders Day, has started avoiding eye contact in the hallway. His handshake's gotten softer. He's sweating through meetings. He knows. On some primal level, I think he knows the floor's about to fall out. But Derek's still strutting, still printing color-coded org charts like they're sacred scrolls, still patting Alan on the back like a frat bro on homecoming. He doesn't see it coming, doesn't know that I've already called my lawyer, that I've already begun updating the board, that I'm no longer just watching. I'm counting down. 3 moves left, 2 meetings, 1 summit. Then the silence ends, and I speak. Derek's first official team meeting was like watching a car crash choreographed by a theater major with a marketing degree. He rolled into the conference room in a slim-fit suit that looked like it had been vacuum-sealed onto his body, holding a designer notebook no one ever saw him write in. "Let's disrupt the status quo," he said, clapping his hands like we were at a TED talk instead of a quarterly performance review. He pulled up a slide titled Refactoring the Core Team, as if he'd spent more than 9 minutes learning our org chart. He pointed at names, boxes, arrows, moved entire departments around like Monopoly properties. No context, no history, just colors and acronyms. He turned toward me, standing right next to the whiteboard with that frat boy smirk, and said it. And of course, Alan's longtime assistant will continue helping with meeting logistics and calendar hygiene. Calendar hygiene. The room went still for half a breath, just long enough for every executive present to register the insult and decide whether to react. Alan glanced my way, brief, mechanical, but said nothing. Not a word. Stared at the floor tiles like they were suddenly fascinating. Derek was already moving on, talking about ROI synergies and lean reinvention, probably inventing phrases as he went. I didn't speak. I didn't blink. I simply wrote one word on my notepad, witnessed. Humiliation's a strange thing. It doesn't always arrive with yelling or tears. Sometimes it shows up like static in your spine, a faint buzz just under the skin. You feel it in your jaw, locked tight so the scream doesn't slip out. You feel it behind your eyes, where you refuse to let the moisture win. But I've learned over time, rage is a tool, and tools don't work when you're swinging them blind. So I smiled, I nodded. I even jotted something down like a good little assistant. Then I went back to my office, closed the door, turned the blinds, and called Mitchell, my lawyer of 12 years. Activate the contingency binder, I said. Didn't ask which one. He knew. You want me to draft the full resolution, he asked. Yes, the board one, and dig up the founder clause. A pause, then a soft whistle. It's go time. I looked out the window, watching Derek walk across the parking lot with his sunglasses on at dusk. It's almost time, I said, but we're going to let the fish get comfortable in the tank first. The founder clause was buried in a 6-year-old board document. A clause Alan had forgotten all about, because I'd made sure he would. Back then, he was still humble, still hungry. He signed anything I put in front of him, eyes full of trust. One of those things gave me the right to override executive leadership in a crisis, provided I had backing from 2 legacy investors. I already had 3 in my phone favorites. Derek was the match. Alan had doused the floor in gasoline over the past 2 years. And now I was holding the lighter. But first, I needed to know how deep the rot went. Over the next week, I played the role. I brought coffee to 2 meetings. I emailed calendar invites like a good little admin. I even complimented Derek's strategic alignment memo to his face, which he'd clearly had AI write because it included the phrase fungible innovation stacked 3 times. But while I played secretary, I was also playing spy. I pulled access logs. I reviewed Slack threads, started cross-referencing vendor contracts, and found 2 that had been rerouted through shell agencies linked to Derek's college buddy, a guy who sells culture transformation, retreats in the Berkshires. I printed it all, highlighted it, filed it in the folder labeled QIS, Quiet Internal Sabotage. By Thursday, Derek had begun referring to me as Miss Denise in meetings, like I was his aunt handing out lemon cookies instead of the reason this company existed. Alan never corrected him. He changed too. The Alan I mentored would have been mortified. This version, the glossy, brand-polished CEO who practiced his signature for investor letters, was either scared or complicit. Maybe both. That night, I poured a glass of Malbec, opened my laptop, and began composing a letter to the 3 original investors. The subject line was simple: a situation you should be aware of. The attachment was 47 pages long. The last slide said, proposed leadership realignment. I didn't need to warn Derek. He wouldn't see it coming even if I spelled it out in Comic Sans and stapled it to his forehead. Before the glass office and the marble reception desk, before the interns with ring lights and job titles like brand synergy architect. It was just me and a broken air conditioner in a strip mall coworking space. The company, back then, it didn't even have a name that stuck, just a buggy prototype app built by 2 caffeine-addled Stanford dropouts who couldn't balance a checkbook, but swore they'd change the world. They pitched me on a napkin during a networking event. Everyone else walked away after 10 minutes. I stayed for an hour, not because the idea was brilliant, it wasn't. It barely worked, but the problem they wanted to solve, that was real. And I knew if someone older, meaner, and far more stubborn got behind the wheel, could become something, so I wrote a check. Not a big one, just enough to cover server costs, ramen, and their rent for 3 months. They offered me 10% equity. I said I wanted 40%. They laughed. I said, you want the check or not? They handed over the paperwork so fast, I barely finished my wine. 3 years later, one of them had vanished into a polyamorous commune in Oregon. Other was threatening to sell the IP to a competitor because he wanted a Tesla. And me, I was still there, still grinding. still wiring money at 3 a.m. when the back end caught fire and we were 3 days from missing payroll. I quietly bought out the one who disappeared. The second one, I let him sell, but I controlled the buyer. By the time Alan entered the picture, the bones were solid. He had polish, confidence, MBA language, could smile while saying absolutely nothing, which is more useful in fundraising than anyone admits. I made him COO, coached him, protected him from his own ego. When I needed surgery and had to step back, I gave him the reins, but never the keys to the vault. That's when I created the blind trust. 60% of the company's equity, buried behind shell structures and legacy legal documents even the board didn't fully understand. Didn't want my name in headlines. I didn't want another tech matriarch sob story on the cover of Forbes. I wanted control without attention. I wanted the power to disappear, but only until I needed to reappear. Then came the state infrastructure deal. Our competitor had stronger code, a slicker demo, and deeper lobbying connections. But I had something they didn't, patience and a fake name. Margaret Ellis, that was the alias. I filed the paperwork, sent the RFP under an advisory firm I created in Delaware, and made the pitch myself, gray wig, voice modulator, the whole 9 yards. Don't laugh, it worked. The Department of Transportation signed a 3-year contract worth $28 million with Ellis Consulting. A month later, Ellis transferred the service component to us, my company. Clean, legal, untraceable unless you had the clearance to see through the filings. Alan called it a miracle, called it Tuesday. I should have known even then his gratitude had an expiration date. When the money rolled in, so did the vultures. Consultants, advisors, strategic partners who'd never held a wrench or solved a deployment problem, suddenly floating around like they'd always been here. Derek was just the newest in a long line of snakes, but at least his venom came with neon charts and sponsored LinkedIn posts. Now, I was watching them circle the kill, where the body still had a pulse and a knife in hand. I called Mitchell again the following morning. Draft the board resolution, I said. You want to initiate the clause? He asked, already typing. Not yet, I said. Just prepare the packet and add the investor endorsements. I'll get the signatures. And Alan? I looked at the framed photo on my shelf, me and Alan from the early days, grinning like idiots in front of a banner that said we made it. In Comic Sans. Find out with everyone else. It started with a meeting that I was never supposed to know about. No calendar invite, no hallway whispers, not even a slipped agenda item. Just a suspiciously locked conference room and the unmistakable scent of too expensive cologne wafting down the hallway like a warning shot. Derek was inside, of course, holding court like the undercooked Gordon Gekko he thought he was. Alan sat to his right. Few mid-level VPs rounded out the table, people with just enough stock to be dangerous, but not enough memory to be loyal. I wouldn't have known it was happening if it weren't for Jasmine. Jasmine used to be my intern, back when her biggest crisis was figuring out how to politely decline a lunch invite from the creepy marketing director. I taught her how to write emails that sounded like velvet, but cut like razors. She's receptionist now, smart, steady, sharper than most of the execs walking past her desk pretending she doesn't exist. She texted me mid-meeting, 2 words, Derek's purging. I walked past the glass wall like I was heading to the copy room. I didn't slow down, didn't even look, but I counted faces. Took note of who was laughing too loud, who was nodding too fast. Derek had brought printouts, thick, glossy ones with charts. I knew the look. This wasn't a brainstorm. It was an execution plan. I waited until after hours. Then I pulled the janitor's spare badge and let myself in. Jasmine had accidentally left a copy of the packet on the console table by the door. I took it. The title, Operational Realignment, Efficiency Roadmap V1.4. I read it on the floor of my living room with a glass of bourbon and a pencil clenched between my teeth. It wasn't just insulting. It was surgical. Derek had outlined a phased streamlining plan that conveniently eliminated anyone connected to the original funding rounds. Me, legacy board observers, and 3 advisory positions I personally created to keep early values intact. He even included a PR blurb, fresh leadership, future-facing vision. I laughed out loud at that one. Future-facing. The man hadn't faced a real challenge in his life. He just assumed everyone before him was a speed bump. Buried on page 9 was the worst part, a hostile buyout mechanism. Using investor fatigue and reputation management as leverage, he planned to approach the minor shareholders, purchase enough of their scraps to bluff majority influence, and then push through a new stock class that would dilute any dormant controlling interests. Translation, erasing me. Problem was, the interests he assumed were dormant weren't. They were buried, silent, strategically camouflaged. Derek didn't see camouflage. He saw empty chairs and smelled blood. I texted Mitchell. Me, efficiency proposal confirmed. Mitchell, summit, me, 3 weeks. Alan moved it up. Mitchell, you want to play it quiet or loud? I stared at the document's final page, Phase 3, rebrand legacy stakeholders as if we were barnacles to be scraped off the hull before launch. Me, let's start quiet. But bring the big folder. The big folder wasn't a metaphor. It was a real, leather-bound binder, thick as a law school textbook, filled with everything from the original shareholder agreements to forensic accounting logs. It lived in Mitchell's fireproof cabinet and had one rule: only open when war is declared. I wasn't there yet, but the border had been crossed. The next morning, I arrived 15 minutes early, sat in the kitchen, waited. Derek strolled in eventually, sunglasses hooked on his collar, sipping something green and overpriced. Looked surprised to see me. Early bird, he said, chuckling like a man who'd never been hit in the face with a subpoena. I smiled back, just checking on the coffee filters. His smirk wavered for half a second, then he was gone. But I wasn't smiling when he left. In fact, I didn't smile again for the rest of the day. Not even when Jasmine slipped me another note, this one just one word: summit, date, time, location. The war room had been booked. The invitation sent. What they didn't know was, I'd already rewritten the ending. I invited Alan for coffee the way you'd invite a neighbor over before demolishing their house. Smiling, casual, no need for alarm. He picked the place, of course. Some rooftop patio with glass railings and almond milk everything, where the employees wore lanyards like necklaces, and the chairs were made from recycled gilt. He showed up 10 minutes late, already typing something on his phone, already apologizing with that polished, rehearsed charm he used when spinning layoffs into strategic evolution. Denise, he said, sliding into the seat across from me, still not looking up. I'm glad you reached out. We don't do this enough, just you and me off the clock. I sipped my coffee, burned my tongue a little on purpose. Yeah, just us. He talked first, of course. That's how Alan works. Fill the silence before it starts asking questions. He spoke in the airy language of someone who's forgotten what it's like to build something with their hands. Every sentence was a word cloud: growth mindset, strategic scale, capital velocity. He used the word synergy 3 times before the waitress even brought my toast. And then, somewhere between him explaining our market posture and complimenting Derek's vision clarity, he slipped. You know, he said, stirring his coffee like it owed him money. Once we're public. No one remembers founders anyway. It's all about the team now, the current narrative. He said it like it was nothing, like it was weather, like I hadn't been his narrative for a decade. I watched him for a moment, let it sink. He didn't notice. I nodded, of course. He smiled, relieved. That was the moment he let himself believe I was truly out of the picture. That I was just another legacy voice, a polite nod in the company timeline, be honored in a LinkedIn post and forgotten by Q2. I didn't argue. I didn't ask follow-ups. I just thanked him for the coffee, stood up, and left him there, stirring ashes into overpriced caffeine. Back at my office, I didn't turn on the lights, just sat in the dark for a while. Let the feelings settle, not rage, not even grief. Just a deep, hollow clarity, like finding a key you didn't know was missing. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up the summit file. Investor Summit, originally designed as a formality, a champagne-slicked slideshow of inflated numbers and empty promises, was under my jurisdiction. According to the bylaws, which Alan never bothered to reread, the founder's shares came with one overlooked perk: agenda authority. I couldn't cancel the summit, but I could rewrite the script. So I did. I logged into the internal planning portal and quietly revised the schedule, replaced Derek's hour-long vision for Q3 with a single 15-minute block labeled Special Executive Review. I removed 2 consultant-led panels and inserted a board resolution presentation in their place. I added 2 names to the guest list, both early investors, both legally recognized as voting authorities. Then I locked the file with my override key and marked it as final. By the time the administrative assistant opened it the next day to print the handouts, there would be no time to argue, no room to change course. Alan had always been a performer, a good one at that, slick, charming, photogenic in a way that made VC firms salivate. But today, I saw the crack. the chip in the veneer. He was playing CEO in a suit someone else paid for, and I finally realized he wasn't afraid of being betrayed. He was afraid of being irrelevant. And that fear, that was going to be the hook I used to drag him off the stage. The first investor I called was Glenn Mallory. Glenn doesn't do LinkedIn. He doesn't do press. He doesn't do anything unless there's a bottle of rye on the table and your pitch has fewer buzzwords than a highway billboard. Glenn was one of our seed angels, old school, ex-military logistics guy who invested not because he believed in the product, because I did. When we hit our first cash flow panic, he wired $250,000 without blinking and told me, "Don't screw it up or I'll haunt your dreams." He answered on the second ring. "Denise," he grunted. "Someone dying?" "Not yet," I said, "but someone's about to wish they had." 10 minutes later, he was in. The second call was to Lydia Cho. Lydia made her fortune building supply chain software so reliable, Amazon tried to buy her twice. She still drives a 15-year-old Prius and once shut down a $40 merger meeting because the other party used Comic Sans in their pitch deck. She has never once smiled at Alan. When I laid out what Derek was planning, the purge, the rebrand, the hostile dilution, she was quiet for a full minute. Then, "He's trying to erase you. He thinks I'm invisible." "Good," she said. "Let him think that." The third was Robert Klein. Real estate baron, part-time pilot, full-time menace when crossed. He'd only invested because I'd helped him outmaneuver a competitor in a zoning lawsuit. He once told me, "You're not the kind of woman people see coming. That's your weapon." I sent him Derek's proposal. 5 minutes later, he replied with 2 words, "Use me." Within 24 hours, I had their signed statements. Digital, time-stamped, legally binding. Each one pledged full support for any action I deemed necessary to preserve the integrity and continuity of original shareholder interests. Mitchell received the PDFs with a simple subject line: green light. Meanwhile, Derek was busy playing Emperor. He started holding alignment lunches with junior execs, handing out branded notebooks like he was launching a startup inside our startup. Someone caught a snippet of his speech in the break room. "We're going to look back on this as the pivot that made the company legendary. Once we clean house, the real money starts flowing." Clean house. Interesting choice of words from a man standing in mine. He also started referring to me, openly now, as Denise the dinosaur. Said it